And now we're finally at it. We're at the main event. We've been poking and prodding at it the entire show. The Four Pillars match. MJF is going to defend the AEW World Championship against Sammy Guevara, Jungle Boy Jack Perry, and Darby Allin. Listen, we've been talking about it tons, about how the build has been iffy. I don't think necessarily we have to rehash that, but you did bring up a point earlier on, and I think this is kind of where we're at here, because I don't think we have to rehash all the discourse around the, was it how iffy the build has been. But I think you made an interesting point, Jesse, and I think we should talk about it, and I'll let you go with it. But I think ultimately, despite the fact that this match is going to be good because the guys here are just too talented, that's the thing. They're probably going to want to prove the haters wrong and so on and so forth. I think we end up in a situation where a lot of these guys look worse off than when they came in from the get-go.
Yeah, I think
lost a little luster. If you
I think two things have undermined this build that I can point to.
Okay.
The first is Sammy Guevara's character is incredibly inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, whether it's Tony's this creative, whether it's Sammy wants to do certain things, I'm not sure. But to me, it's Sammy Guevara is not a wrestler that should be having confusion about what his best role is. I think it's very obvious he's a scumbag heel.
Yep.
And he's athletic and he's talented, but he's really arrogant, and he's self-absorbed, and he loves himself, and that should be his character. And he'll get heat, and he'll get people into his matches, and people will want to see the babyfaces beat him. And for whatever reason, he's been flirting back and forth for years now on being a babyface.
And I don't see it.
And it just hasn't worked, even though it's obvious he should be in one direction. And just within this feud, because after he had some sort of, character confusion over the course of early last year, once he kind of got back in the Jericho Appreciation Society, he got back on track. It's like, he's an obvious heel, and he's doing his thing, and it's working.
And it's working with the thing with Dan Garcia in the meantime, when where he's just being this this shitty little punk is like, hey, I'll take you under my wing. You're like, okay, it all works.
That's his character. And then for whatever reason, he's gone. He's in this feud alone. He started off kind of turning babyface. He's disassociated from Jericho. He's, saying Max doesn't deserve a title shot. Look how hard I work. Babyface promos. Then he was a heel. He's aligned with Max. He got paid off. And at that point, I was like, okay, now we're back on track again. Now it makes sense. Sammy is a heel. He's getting paid off with MJF. And, we're going to get to this 4-way match where, Sammy and MJF are going to be working together. And then inevitably they're going to fall apart because Sammy won't lay down for Max or whatever. But instead, we are back at this point where Sammy's a babyface again. So just within the context of this feud, he has, turned babyface, then turned heel, then turned babyface again. And it wasn't like it was a one segment swerve where he pretended to turn heel and then, oh no, I'm still babyface. He was heel for like 2 weeks and then he was babyface again because Max did something reprehensible and he's back to being a babyface. And he's gotten babyface promos like he did on Wednesday night. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to like. He's in this feud with these other people, and I think it has taken so much of the steam out of this feud. And I think it's hurt people's emotional investment in the match because he's just a part of it, but it's this part that's been responsible for a lot of, I think the storyline has been, what are Sammy's decisions? Who's he aligned with? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's just been too, his character's motivations have been too volatile. And he's not a sympathetic babyface. And I think it's hurt everything in the match. That's my first point, but I'll let you reflect on that before I mention my other issue.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like it in the sense that he's also they're trying to babyface him up where you have two natural baby faces already in the match and who are arguably much more over, right? Like very, very
I think
much
they're
more
definitely
over.
more over as baby faces.
So, if you had added an extra level of scumbaggery to this, I absolutely, look, I am 100% with you. I don't know why he comes out to a Dragon Ball montage, or not montage, but homage is the word I was looking for. Dragon Ball, like beloved anime show Dragon Ball Z that even people who don't watch anime like and know about, I don't know why he as a heel would come out. Like, his presentation has always been right and left, when I agree with you. Like, those are my notes. I agree with you, Jesse. He's a scumbag. He should be a scumbag. I don't know him personally. I'm not saying he's legitimately a scumbag. When I'm saying his persona is a scumbag, that's what we should be zeroing in on. I agree.
And then, so the other element of this is that I think has been hugely detrimental to the match, is the whole Four Pillars branding aspect of it. I think it was a mistake to really lean hard into the idea that these guys are the Four Pillars, the future of our company. And they added that branding very early within AEW, where we just never knew if these guys were going to develop in the skills and the popularity to be main eventers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there's been other people that have come along that have maybe usurped them as far as young talent that people would feel more comfortable as potential main eventers. You could look at someone like Ricky Starks.
And not just dudes.
Yeah. And there's an element of that in it, kind of like, the whole, I don't think AEW fans really care who the Four Pillars are. And I haven't liked the tone in a lot of these promos that they've done, where it's focused on this kind of meta narrative of like, I deserve to be the champion. I work the hardest. I was on the indies. I broke my ass. All three of these guys, Sammy, Jungle Boy, and Darby, sound the same when they should be three distinct different personalities, but they all sound the same when they're like, MJF, he doesn't deserve it. He barely wrestles. I'm the heart and soul of AEW. I want to be the face of AEW. It comes across as very WWE-ish. And that we're talking about, I want to be the face of the company. The authority doesn't want me to be the face of the company, but I work the hardest and the fans like me the most. And it's like, none of these guys come across as that sympathetic. And none of these guys come across as people that, like, it kind of inherently kind of makes MJF look more sympathetic, because MJF is the guy who's like, basically coming out and he's like, all you guys whine and I win my matches and you guys all think you can have this role, but you can't. And I'm like, they're kind of right. He's right. They think they can have this role and they can.
Connects with our discussions about heels earlier with Adam Cole. And, it's like, yeah, I mean, the heel is making sense. What do you want from me? Yeah.
And so I think that element with it has also hurt. Just the idea that I don't think fans are really going to respond that much to, like, oh, I want to be the face of AEW. I'm the heart and soul of AEW. Like, those are fine things to say, but like, as a fan, like, I don't really care who the face and heart and soul of AEW is. What kind of personality are you displaying that I'm going to enjoy seeing your promos, and what kind of work are you doing that's going to make me excited to see you in matches? That's what I care about as a fan. And I just think that the whole direction that all three of these guys have kind of been working in is trying to be like, I deserve it. I'm the best of the Four Pillars. And Max is the least deserving of it. It's like, wrestling's not necessarily the industry is not about what you deserve. It's about what you can do.
Yeah.
Yep. And it just, I don't think that's emotionally responded with anybody. And I think it has give off the impression that none of these guys can promo, and that all these promos have been weak.
Well, they mostly have. Let's be honest. They mostly have. And I've pointed out the similarities in all of this. And look, this is how Sammy really could have chomped down on something to steer away from it. If he had been, a heel, if he had acted like a heel throughout, instead of he going down I went up and down the roads here in Austin and down to Houston, and like, if he would have been the scumbag, he would have stood apart instantly in his promos immediately. It'd just be like neither of the others. Darby's motivations is that he's nuts and he just, and yes, like his arc is, I have crawled my way up to this. I was living in my car, yada yada, and now here is where this is where I am, kind of thing. And I think Jungle Boys, I think the angle they didn't work off enough is the idea that everyone was like, oh, well, you're just in here because you're pretty and you have a famous dad, kind of thing. He could have not necessarily leaned into it, but play off of it a little more, because they all sort of, like you said, they all sort of smush together. It's just like one big ball of the exact same grievance and just repeated, but with different inflections.
Kind of feels like to me, and this might to give, and I don't know, this is just kind of an impression I get from watching it. It kind of feels like to me that they're like, okay, none of these guys are maybe strong conventional promos. Let's go over what they're going to say, and whether that's Tony doing that, whether that's an agent doing that, whether it's Chris Jericho doing that, whoever, one of the coaches, whoever is doing this. They're like, all right, this is your hook. MJF is a scumbag and he doesn't deserve to be champion. And you're a hardworking young babyface and you deserve to be champion.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more, and that kind of message was told to all three guys, and all three guys' promos all sound like that. As opposed to if you were to have more experienced talkers, they would be put in a position where they could add a little bit more individuality to their promos.
Right.
But perhaps because there's been maybe a little bit more hand-holding due to the lack of experience, the promos have a little bit more. And one of the reasons it probably sounds more like a WWE thing, because that's what WWE does. Everyone talks the same in WWE. I thought I liked Darby's first promo, where Sting came out and Sting cut a promo too, and that kind of interaction with MJF.
Mm-hmm. But
then when he had another one where they were all, it was,
all three of them
in the ring.
Oh God,
he sounded like a completely different person.
Yeah.
Like he didn't sound like the Darby Allin character that got over as this kind of like loner, drifting kind of guy who isn't interested in playing politics, and instead he's like, I think, is he the one that said you're only here because of the California clique?
Yes, yep, that one.
And it's like, that's not Darby's personality. Like,
no.
And it felt off. And
it felt middle school for him in this.
Yeah, and just
cool kids.
Yeah, and it's one of the things. It's like I feel less good about Darby and Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara now than I did a few months ago, and that's not a good thing. And
no,
I want to make it kind of clear here. I'm really supportive of the idea of being like, let's take some of our homegrown talent, young guys under 30. I think Darby's just turned 30, and let's put them in the main event with MJF. We'll do a four-way to kind of masquerade the fact that none of them maybe are individually big enough to do it. Mm-hmm. And let's just see what these guys can do in the main event. Now, I think what they've learned is maybe that there's some shortcomings there, but I'm really supportive of, let's try something with this new young talent. Let's throw them into the deep end of the pool and see if they can swim. And they've learned something, I think, so far.
The audience has learned something, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it hasn't been beneficial to their careers. But you got to at least try.
Yes.
And a lot of wrestling companies are afraid to do that. And a lot of them are like, we can't put this guy here because we need someone the fans are going to recognize. So here's an older name from the past. And you're never going to evolve your company without taking those shots. I don't think the execution has been there at all. But I'm really supportive of the fact that AEW is legitimately trying with these guys.
And I'm with you on that. And look, this is what I would have liked to have seen happen, right? Because I especially when it comes to your world title, build a challenger, build one guy. That's all I need. That's really how it should be. Because you're trying to build three other guys at once. Look, it's also one of the components why I feel this main event feud isn't working, is that you're trying to build three guys at once, and none of the three guys have the basic chops to pull it off. Anyway, then play to their strengths. They're all great wrestlers. What should you do? Have a tournament. Just have them have a tournament. I know they did the tournament nonsense and then they retconned it, but I was even going, have these guys have them have a little round robin amongst themselves. Have a round robin and let the guys get themselves over like a lot of guys get over, and girls in AEW, working.
Yep.
Just have them work. That's all. And Jamie Hayter didn't get over because of her prime mic skills, Jesse. She got over because she can work. And it's the same thing with these three guys too. If they had, or a competition, like a leaderboard, this is what I was, what I was hoping we'd do, like a round robin or a leaderboard where the guys are working every week, either amongst themselves or not, and we have a scoreboard. And whoever has the most points at the end gets the shot at MJF. And then we're still going down this experiment, like you said, right? The good part of being, we're going to throw some of the young guys into the main event, which is great. But Tony then is testing out guys live and in these big spots. He's like, let's see how this goes, fellas. And he can readjust course as we're going along. And then suddenly maybe it's like, you know what? Darby's the guy. And he has Darby win the tournament or whatever. And then like the experiment could have been a lot more real time. And it would have allowed for a more interesting build, better matches. And I think all three guys would have benefited. They all would have been elevated in a certain way if we had stuck to just let them work.
I totally agree. I also, this whole thing dynamic in AEW, if you want to be a top guy in AEW, you got to earn that. Mm-hmm. And you got to be really, really, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
You got to be really, I got to emphasize this. You got to be really, really fucking good. Like, you just have to be. You have to be a really good promo. And you have to be a really good promo in different types of settings. You got to be a good 30-second TV interview backstage with Renee Paquette promo. You got to be a good 10-minute in the ring promo person. Those are two skills you pretty much have to have. And you got to be really good wrestler in the ring. And you got to be able to get over your whether you're a heel or babyface, get the sympathies with the audience and work them and do all these things that you have to be. Just standard is really high. Look at the people that have been AEW World Champions. It's Chris Jericho. It's Kenny Omega. It's Jon Moxley. It's Hangman Page. It's MJF. It's like the most talented people we have in this industry, for real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like WWE where they will push someone, and even if they don't really kind of get over, or they're just kind of they're pretty basic, like you can keep pushing them, and it doesn't really matter if we're pushing giving them a main event. It doesn't really matter if Baron Corbin's going to be in the main event of a pay-per-view match, because whatever, money's guaranteed or whatever happens. AEW's promotion where you got to earn it, and if you are not at that level, the fans will recognize it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what's happening with some of these guys. And some of these guys are just not going to get to that level. Yeah. Some of them, it's going to come out that they're just not good enough to make it. And people sometimes don't want to say that. People want to act like anyone can get over with the right kind of booking. Anyone can get over with, the right presentation. And it's if you're a big fan of a wrestler, you don't want to say it's their fault that they can't do it, but it's a high bar to clear. And not every single person with potential in AEW is going to turn out to be a main event world champion. AEW in particular has this thing. There's a dynamic in place here where if someone feels new or someone feels fresh, like they haven't really been pushed that hard before, fans will gravitate towards that person because they have this mysterious potential of being perhaps a top star.
Let's call it the Kyle Fletcher effect.
Right. I think that's a good case. Like, Kyle Fletcher's a great potential wrestler. I don't know if Kyle Fletcher will ever be can be a main event wrestler. But is he worth signing? Yeah. Mm-hmm, sign Kyle Fletcher. Like yes, do that. But the idea is like Kyle Fletcher is going to be your world champion in 2 years. Like, I don't know. That's a lot of hurdles he'll have to clear to prove to me that he has that kind of star power and ability to do that. Yeah. You got it. Like, we're talking about the top, 2 or 3% of all wrestlers are really going to thrive in that role. And I think that like I saw this like with a big thing was like, to me, it was like the Wardlow and Powerhouse Hobbs kind of feud. And some people were more into the idea of Hobbs. Like, Hobbs is the guy you got to push. Wardlow, don't push. Hobbs is the new future star. Wardlow is not going to be that guy. It's Hobbs. And to me, they seem very similar talent with similar strengths and similar weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
But one guy had really been pushed kind of somewhat hard in Wardlow, and one guy kind of hadn't. So people were like naturally gravitating towards, we got to push Hobbs. But if I were to take a step back and I'm like, I don't know if either of these guys can really be top stars, because I think they have the same kind of weaknesses, and I haven't seen really anything to change that. But the allure of potential, and Hobbs certainly has potential, makes people sometimes overreact to, they need to be pushed now. And it always is kind of like, it's the same thing in sports where like draft picks or prospects are more valuable commodities than known quantities, because the mystery and the ability to dream on somebody is more exciting than knowing what you have, even if the thing that you know that what you have is a strong baseline and a useful piece to whatever team you have. Just like the same way, if Jungle Boy, Darby Allin, and Sammy Guevara are not main event stars, they're not people that should be world champion, does not mean that they don't have a lot of value to you as a company. They're just not at that level. And in AEW, there's not a shortage of people that are at that level. Like, it's not like they're really, it's great to have young new stars, but it's also like not necessarily, and you always need more star power, right? But it's not like they're not like All Japan Pro Wrestling, where it's like, all right, we've got Kento Miyahara. It's like, man, we really need this Jake Lee thing to work, because we do not have anybody else. No, but I'm serious. That's the opportunity that was presented.
Yeah, the comparison is adept. Yes.
Like, and as opposed to AEW, it's like, Bryan Danielson can't even get a world title run in, because we've got so many people, and we've got to work Hangman back into the mix. We've got MJF. There's, MJF is this person where it was very obvious this person should be world champion in like a once in a, like, not like, I know it's part of his catchphrase, but like once in a generation talent. It's very obvious. Like, 1 year into AEW that like, okay, he has to be a world champion. But it's a tough bar to clear.
And I think part of what you mentioned WWE, and I think that's also part of the equation here, is that, in WWE, if you are not painted into a title scene, you are not perceived as thriving, right? And I think that's some holdover for 20 years of the same company doing the same thing, in a quasi monopoly, whereas AEW has shown that a thriving mid-card is possible and important, and you can still get yourself over. You can still be a top guy in the company without being, at the absolute highest level, nose pressed against the ceiling kind of thing. Because there are other spots on the card where you can grow, where you can thrive, where your strengths will be used to their max. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if Jungle Boy never makes it to a world championship level, doesn't mean he's a failure, It doesn't, and I think that's what a lot of criticism is, or lack of is pussyfooting. I guess the word is pussyfooting around the idea that, I don't want to say Jungle Boy is not going to be a world champion, because that means he's going to be a failure. But no. That's not what it means at all. I don't want to say that Darby Allin will never be a world champion, because that'll mean he'll have failed. No,
and that's a big thing. Like, the idea that, especially in the WWE's "you deserve it" era, like, if you win the world championship once, you're success for life. Miz world champ, Miz 2 world championships for Miz. Like, can't say whatever you say, 2 world championships. Like, but it's a one of those things where it's like, but it creates this dynamic where it's like, if you don't win a world championship, you're a failure. And I wrote an article about this regarding Wardlow a couple months ago, that I was saying, like, I think Wardlow's ceiling is probably upper mid card challenger type, kind of where he's slotted now, until he really shows, like, I think more dynamicism in the ring, in more comfortable promos. I don't see him as someone like, if you were to like, who, MJF or Wardlow? who should be the face of my company? Wardlow looks the part, which helps, you know,
Oh, we know how much
Billy
JR
Graham.
loves him. Yes,
Yeah. Like I said, thanks Superstar Billy Graham. This is why, you are why we think this is you conditioned generations of people. But it's you wouldn't compare them like a skill set. Who's the more dynamic performer, who can get people more emotionally invested in their feuds and programs, and who can draw money because of that. I'm looking at like an MJF. I'm looking at like a Hangman Page or a Kenny Omega or a John Moxley type.
And those four guys you just mentioned there will get you in the building for entirely different reasons on top of that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you're a failure.
No.
Just like how in real sports, there's plenty of people that had very successful careers where they made tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and they were never all-stars, and they never won championships. I remember Jalen Rose, former NBA player, saying that, like, when you get to the NBA, like, everyone wants to be an all-star or MVP. Like, everyone wants to be all-star MVP. Everyone wants to be that level. And eventually, most guys realize that they're probably not going to hit that level. What the next best thing you can be is a veteran. That's the next. You have someone that is in the league for a number of years,
sure,
that has been cashing big paychecks for years, and has the respect of someone that knows what they're doing. And in wrestling is the same way. Not everyone is going to be world champion, but the next best thing is there's plenty of roles to be put in that. And I think with WWE, passing the world title around to pretty much anyone that's stuck around the company for a long enough period of time has kind of changed that, but it is something that you're going to have to learn. And New Japan has, for the most part, been good about this. Like, Haruki Goto is never going to be the world champion.
No.
Doesn't mean that he hasn't had a really great career with tons of memorable moments and been a really useful wrestler that has the respect and admiration of anyone who's watched him.
Tomohiro Ishii is another good example. Like, these guys who are just, you've had roles to fill, and not only filled them well, filled them on a level that, probably escaped all expectations as well. And they're going to be remembered. They fantastic careers, lauded on multiple levels. Yeah. The comparison.
Right. And there's a reason Ishii was never world champion. Ishii or Okada, who should be world champion. Ishii or Tanahashi, who should be world champion.
Oh, no, I know.
Ishii or Naito, who should be world champion. Ishii or Evil, who should be world champion. Okay, that last one was bad. But the point is that, like, it's not because it was the world championship is important. Really matters who has it. At least it should. And Ishii was never at that level. Does not mean that Ishii should be a failure. And I think wrestling fans need to understand, like, get reconditioned to that, especially American wrestling fans, because WWE has made it so, Roddy Piper was never the world champion,
And
Mr. Perfect. I think he was AWA champion, but he was never, a real major world champion. When it was his prime.
Dusty Rhodes was never WWF champion. Have you heard this? Dusty Rhodes?
He was not Dusty Rhodes.
No, he was never.
The legendary Dusty Rhodes.
Right?
Well, it must be really important then for Cody to want to win the title, because Dusty was never WWF champion.
I know. He probably thinks about it every day, I'll tell you what. But some excellent points, and there's a lot of. I agree. I think we had a great discussion. Look, if we were to bring it back, like, to the match itself, MJF retains, right? I don't think there's much of a question.
And that's part of the problem for the build, is that nobody believes that MJF is going to lose, even though theoretically the odds are stacked against him, right? That's part of the like fundamental marketing of a four-way match, is in some ways like the idea that MJF, he's only got a 25% chance of retaining. Mm-hmm. Someone else could be pinned and he could lose the title, which I really hope they don't do.
I really hope it doesn't make sense to do it. I don't see who.
Could you imagine? Just imagine the internet if Sammy Guevara pinned Jungle Boy in a fluke to win the title.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I think I'd have to break my phone because I couldn't witness the discourse if that happened. But
and Twitter and Discords. I don't know. It'd just be awful.
I think he's a huge favorite to win. I think he's someone said. I think he's 50. Everyone else is 50-1 or something like that.
And Sammy is the odds-on favorite.
No, MJF.
Oh, MJF.
Sorry.
Jesus.
That wasn't clear. No. If MJF was 50-1, I would be I'd be placing some hypothetical units on MJF every day. No, like it's just and that's that hurts a build if the main event feels like a foregone conclusion for sure. Maybe they have something big up their sleeves. Maybe there's going to be a big angle at the end of the show.
Look, I agree. I think the match has all the potential to be very good because the guys who are in the match are way too talented. That's the thing, right? They're just and it's
talented. So important. It's so important to them.
Yeah. So I think they're going to go. They're going to do the max to make this to shut everyone up. Ultimately, they're like, look, you bitched for weeks. Now look at this is the end product, right? Ultimately, it's for guys like me. And they're going to do it for guys like me.
And MJF's, a really good meat and potatoes wrestler. And like Darby's out of his mind. Mm-hmm. Like Darby will die for this.
He will.
To like a scary degree. Sammy is right up there as far as just someone that's gonna like one of the reasons I've probably been higher on Sammy than other people is just because I see a guy that he goes out there and he works so hard and he's willing to do anything to get over, and he'll take all these crazy bumps, and he wants to be great. I do think he wants to be great, like really bad. Mm-hmm. And Jungle Boy's no slouch in that department either. He's going to work extremely hard.
No, and he's had
the biggest match,
and he's had fantastic pay-per-view matches. Jungle Boy, the cage match with Luchasaurus, the casket match. Yeah. No, what the coffin, whatever they called it, the burial match.
The final burial.
The final burial match. That was fantastic too. Like he's no slouch. The problem is not that we don't think these guys are bad wrestlers. It's all the opposite.
And some of the discourse will go too far and be like, these guys suck.
No,
that's not the point. Suck. Yeah.
No, they really don't. They really don't.
And as far as like an effort standpoint, like these guys know what people have been saying about this feud. And these guys know what the buildup has been. And they know that they feel like people have been hating and dumping on it. I think that's just going to motivate them to like with Darby. I'm like kind of scared.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, Darby, he really feels like he needs to prove a point. Goddamn, what on earth is this madman going to do? Yep. So I actually think his wrestling exploits are the least of his challenges to his potential physical health in the long run.